Today's video, we'll be looking at the DTK Tech 1230C.
We review old technology from games to old PCs, and don't forget the doors. Oh yeah, ancient electronics, we cover it all.
This is my DTK Tech 1230C, and this is my newest 286 machine. Hopefully this will become my sort of flagship 286 to fill in that little gap between my 8088 machines and my 386 machines. Not completely necessary, even if you're a retro PC hobbyist. There's really nothing that this machine does that like a slow 386 couldn't really do, but I don't know. I do enjoy filling all the various niches in vintage PC gaming, so this will do nicely. Prior to my main 286, I've had a couple videos on it on the channel before, and it is a 20 megahertz Harris 286 in that thing. But I kind of figure that's a really like high end for 286. If you're going with a 20 or 25 megahertz 286, it feels like at that point you may as well kind of just go with a 386. So I wanted something that represented the 286 era a little better, and I came across this guy, and I have to say, I love it. I think the only thing missing with this case here might be a little LED display, but other than that, it's just, I don't know, I find it a beautiful case here. And in a world where PC cases of this era, and for quite a long time, were all kind of off-white beige, I just love the like, it's very minimal, but I just love these three little lines with accent that are like this blue color. I don't know, it just really sets this case apart. It like I said, it's very minimal. It's just three blue lines. I don't know, but aesthetically, at least for me, it really makes a big difference. So this machine is it runs a 8 megahertz 286 slash 12 megahertz. So by default it's 8 megahertz, which makes it the equivalent of an IBM AT, which is nice. And then if you actually hit the turbo button here, it goes up to 12 megahertz. So 12 megahertz, in my opinion, 12 and 16 megahertz 286s are kind of like the quintessential iconic 286s in my opinion. I wouldn't mind having a 16 megahertz 286, but 12 megahertz does just fine for what I want to do with this machine. So yeah, we have the power LED, hard drive activity LED, the turbo button that actually turbos from the default 8 to 12 megahertz, nice big red reset button, two drives here. These drives should suit us just fine for this era. 1.44 megabyte floppy drive and then a 1.2 megabyte floppy drive. And then I do have a bay space that's open right here. I have considered putting in a CD drive. I know that's kind of frowned upon for 286, but I think it can be useful. Now, I find it useful for situations like, you know, things like this, which are like text adventure compilations on a CD. It can be really useful in a 286, since a lot of games did get re-released on a CD that will play just fine on a 286. But I think we're just going to keep it sort of as a little more period correct for this build, and we're just going to keep it simple with just the floppy drives, no CD drives, at least not at this point. So that said, let's flip this guy around and take a look at the back. Okay, here we go. This is the back of the machine. There's our power supply. There's our power switch right there, the red power switch. And then here we go, model, the Tech 1230C. Right there, made in Taiwan. We've got the dual, you know, there's one for the monitor to pass through, and then it's just a standard 3-prong. Looks like we have 2 ports there. I think those might be serial, like larger serial ports. Not 100% sure at the moment. I think we've got I think that's the I/O card. So I believe that is a parallel port right there. As you see, there's not a lot of back plates there for the expansion slots. This is how I got it. Obviously, I will be either adding cards to fill those in or just putting in the blanks there, so we don't have a bunch of gaping holes. And there we obviously have the video card. I know what this card is, and I was kind of excited to see it, but I'll show you guys in a moment. But it is the video card, and it is older style, has a dip switch on it, and then we have the older style connector there, the 9-pin for you know, your old digital like EGA and CGA monitors, and then we have a newer style 15-pin VGA connector. So this is obviously some kind of VGA card, but it's an older one that also has a connector for you know, EGA and CGA monitors, and which is cool. So let's open this guy up and take a look inside. Alright, so here we go with the case off. Of course, here we have the two bays with the floppy. There's floppies. There's nothing on the bottom one. Here's our power supply here, big old power supply. We've got a hard drive mounted sideways here. Now, I cannot get this hard drive to work. It's a Western Digital. I'm not sure the size. I think it's like a 24 megabyte, maybe, but maybe it's a 43. I forget at the moment, but it's a pretty common model. But even setting it up in the BIOS, the machine will try to boot from it. It'll click a couple times, but nothing will happen. And then if I load up an OS from floppy and I try to access the C drive, it's not there. It's just not seeing it, even though it does try to access it if I set it up correctly on post booting the OS. So I'm probably going to replace that with something newer. I don't think I'm going to go with a CF card, although I might. I don't usually have a problem using those for these older machines, although I do prefer authentic experience with hard drive. So I might try throwing in a Scuzzy drive as well, like a newer Scuzzy drive. Or an older Scuzzy drive, why not? I have a stack of them. So here's the board, here's the two cards. I'm going to remove these cards so we can get a better look here at the motherboard. It doesn't go too far back, so it's not like a huge motherboard. Alright, so here we go with these cards removed. We have 4 16-bit ISA slots and 4 8-bit ISA slots. Here's our CPU right here. It is an Intel 286-12, so it is a 12 megahertz CPU obviously, but in this machine it is 12 and it downclocks. Well, it boots up at 8 megahertz and then turbo takes it up to the full 12. There's chipset VLSI. There's the, I believe that's the BIOS chips right there. Here's our RAM. Now this has 1 megabyte on the motherboard, and there's no other way. There's no other place to add any more RAM. Some of the more high-end 286 motherboards, they'll take like zip or even 30-pin RAM. But this has no room to expand past the 1 megabyte. I think this is right here is the 640, and then here's the additional, 128 to make the 1 megabyte, which is, for a 286, that's actually quite sufficient. But I might add memory by use of like an Intel above core. I might cannibalize my old Turbo XT machine, since I've more or less replaced it with my Tandy 1000 SX. The memory expansion card in that will never see use, so it will be a lot more useful in this machine. So I might take it out of that 8088 PC and put it in this guy to add another 2 megabytes of RAM. Although even in this machine it might not see much use. Here is the slot for a math coprocessor, 287. I do have a 287 at 12 megahertz that I actually took off another dead 286 motherboard, so I'll get that, and I will probably be, that's one of the first upgrades I'll probably be doing. Let's see here, just more chips. That's the Varda battery. It hasn't leaked everywhere, but I am going to be, I'm going to be removing that very soon, because obviously it is dead and it will leak. It might have already leaked a little bit, but I am going to be removing that ASAP. So yeah, goodbye Varda. Okay, and to show you the two cards that were installed in this machine, here's the I/O controller. It is a Western Digital, I believe. Yeah, controller. It's pretty small, slim, nothing too fancy. It's already hooked up. It seems to be working just fine. So I don't think I'm going to replace this. I might just leave this in there, I think. If I do Scuzzy, though, I don't know. Maybe I'll just try another IDE drive. I don't know. We'll see. But this is the I/O controller. So let's take a look now at the video card that was in this machine. So here is the video card I found installed, and it is actually an 8-bit VGA card. So not super common, but this is also the Cirrus Logic card, and it uses the Eagle 2 chipset. We've actually seen this video chip before. We actually saw this in my BSR 386 SX16 PC, although it wasn't a different form. In that PC, it was actually sort of, well, it wasn't a discrete video card. It was kind of like, you could remove it, but it was kind of like built into the motherboard as the onboard video, and it lacked a couple things. I believe it completely lacked a switch, and it lacked the digital out here. So for EGA and CGA, it only had the 15-pin analog VGA connector on it. So it was quite a bit cut down, but the claim to fame of this card and the Eagle 2 chipset is supposedly it is 100% CGA compatible. So with a lot of VGA cards, and even some of the twin ones that have both connectors, there are CGA incompatibilities when playing CGA games, and we've talked about this in earlier videos a little bit. But supposedly this card is 100% compatible. I've also heard it is not 100% compatible, so I don't know if I'm going to do it in this video, because I am doing something different with this machine with video-wise. I don't think we're going to test it now, but I am really happy to have this as a discrete card, because now I can really fully test it, because we have the switches there, and we have our connector, so we could actually hook it up to a CGA monitor now, whereas we couldn't before. So I kind of look forward to testing this card. It is pretty uncommon. So I'll do my own test, and we'll see how compatible it is with CGA. Maybe we'll compare it to some other cards. But this is actually a really good pick for this machine. Now, from experience from my BSR PC, this is, as a VGA card, it is very slow. So this is a very slow VGA card. But I mean, in a 12 megahertz 286, I think it works just great. And it should have, even if it's not perfect CGA compatibility, it should have very good like EGA and CGA compatibility. So that's a cool find. I didn't think I'd ever come across one of these cards. They seem to be pretty rare, but I think we'll be taking a closer look at this thing in a different video, because I do have different plans for this machine video-wise. So let's talk about a video card for the DTK 286. So my goal for this machine, and the niche I feel that this machine fits really well, is EGA. And it kind of makes sense too. Like, EGA games, although there are a ton of them made, and like when I think of old, point and click adventure games from Sierra, I think of EGA. I love the look of EGA, but really EGA wasn't around a whole lot before VGA kind of took over. And I kind of feel it's the same thing with the 286, which came out around, around the same era. 286 kind of was a flash in the pan. It showed up, and then people kind of forgot about it, and it was quickly replaced with the 386 and then 486. So I don't know. I feel like they go hand in hand. I feel the speed, the 8 megahertz, 12 megahertz, 286 is pretty good for most of those EGA titles, especially like point and click adventures. Most of them should run fine on it. So I really want EGA to be the focus. Now, this is the card that came with it, and this is the Cirrus Logic card. This is a VGA card, 8-bit, and again, it's dual. If you look here, it does TTL, about 9-pin, and then it does it has your standard, I think that's 15-pin VGA. It can hook up to either monitor, and you probably have to set what kind of monitor with switches. This is horribly slow VGA, but I'm sure it would be just fine for a 286. This should still be a very good match for the 286. You could also throw in, of course, something like this. This was in my 20 megahertz 286 for the longest time. This is the ATI VGA card. It's 16-bit, and it also does dual. It does you can hook it up to a CGA or EGA monitor, and also VGA, and it has a bus mouse. And this card should be, I think it has 1 megabyte of RAM. It's much later. It's significantly faster than this guy. There's no switches. It actually auto detects what kind of monitor it's hooked up to. So this is a excellent choice. It should have pretty good compatibility with like CGA and things like that. Now the problem with these kind of dual cards is, well, one, the VGA part of them usually isn't very fast, and this card is fast enough for ISA, but if you're really going for EGA, even though I think some of these cards come with certain software that puts them into a more compatible EGA CGA mode, and you can hook them up to a real CGA monitor or whatnot. Some games, specifically I've heard Gods, for example, has problems with these cards that no matter what, even if you set them to EGA modes, even with switches, it will default to VGA. Because these are like dual cards, so some games it confuses. So no matter what, if that game has a VGA option, you try to run an EGA, you want to do EGA, it's going to default to VGA. There's also, you could put in just a straight VGA. This is a 16-bit. This is a Trident card. Probably not as good compatibility with old, CGA and EGA as these that have, you can actually hook them up to an old school monitor. But that could also work well enough. But I want to just go all out with EGA. So I am going to use an actual 8-bit EGA card. Now this is going to be slower. The EGA on this, like running an EGA game on one of these, and probably even this guy is going to be faster than running on this guy, but we're running period hardware here on a 286, so I doubt that will matter. So this will give me the best amount of compatibility for EGA. Of course, there is a problem with this card though, and that is it only hooks up to a monitor that will be a 9-pin TTL monitor. Now there isn't really such thing really as a CGA monitor, but an RGB monitor. Now remember, as we've talked about in the past, this will happily connect to a CGA monitor and do 16 colors on a CGA monitor. If you're using a again, not really a CGA monitor, but a monitor that was meant for CGA, these EGA cards will work on them just fine. It's just you can't use some of the higher resolution EGA modes. But on a full EGA monitor, which are rare as hen's teeth, you will get all the modes. And specifically this card, this is an EGA Wonder 800. So this would be considered a very high-end EGA card, possibly one of the highest-end EGA cards. There is an EGA Wonder 800 Plus, but that's based on the chip in that is actually a VGA chip, and I don't know, I've heard some negative things about it. It's kind of considered the upgrade from this card, but I've heard it has some issues, maybe with compatibility, because it's actually just based on a VGA chipset that's been cut down. Rather, this guy is a true EGA card. I believe Paradise makes some good EGA cards as well, comparable to this one, but I believe the EGA Wonder 800 from ATI is possibly the best or one of the best EGA cards. I'm not sure how much memory we have on here, but I think it's 512. Don't quote me on that though. Again, we have our connector right here, our switch, and there's all kind of settings. You could set it to if you're working with an EGA monitor or a CJ monitor, or certain RGB monitors or multi-sync monitors. These here, usually on EGA cards, people see these and think they're composite output, but actually most of the time they are just sort of like feature connectors that no one ever uses. Although I believe this card, I believe one of them actually is a color composite out. I think so on this card. So that's another cool thing about this guy here. So this should be a really nice match for the 286. I'm really looking forward to running. I've never really ran a machine with pure, like an EGA card. I've always just gone with a VGA card. VGA cards are good. They're almost 100% compatibility with EGA, but again, there can be some issues. I just wanted to go all out with an EGA card. So of course, if we're going all out with this 286 build for EGA, we're going to need an appropriate monitor. And this here is the Princeton HX12E, and the E stands for EGA. Yes, friends, I have finally acquired an actual EGA monitor. So, of course, I could have used one of my Tandy monitors or one of my various RGB monitors that are designed for CGA, and that would have worked just fine for most games. Unfortunately, if using those monitors, I wouldn't have been able to use any of the EGA games that kind of use special modes or high-resolution EGA modes and things like that. So, I finally have a nice EGA monitor. And if you think this resembles the IBM monitor, IBM's EGA monitor, the name escapes me, at the 5170 maybe? Not sure at the moment, but I think that's on purpose. This is basically like a third-party monitor for like the IBM AT or XT or even PC, kind of like the third-party version of the IBM EGA monitor. So this was given to me, donated to me, whatnot, from another local collector. This probably goes up there with one of the coolest things that's ever been given to me, sort of vintage PC wise. So yeah, this is definitely up there as one of the coolest things anyone's ever given me, because I have been looking for a EGA monitor for a very long time. I was going to debut this monitor with the IBM AT. I did a video on that some time ago. Unfortunately, I wanted to restore it, and there are some things I wanted to do. I had an original IBM EGA card in there, and I wanted to debut this monitor with that system. Unfortunately, the power supply finally completely died in that thing. We tried recapping it. That didn't fix it, so I'm on the lookout for IBM AT power supply, either original or third party, something that will fit and work in there. So I don't know when that's going to get up and running, so I thought this would be perfect for the 286, the DTK. I'll just debut it now because it will work great with that machine. So there's a lot I actually like about this monitor. I mean, first of all, I do like that it sort of emulates the look of the IBM model. It's the same kind of style. So this monitor would go really well with like an IBM PC XT or AT, in my opinion. There's the little LED light, and we only have two knobs here. I believe the IBM monitors, both the CGA type and the EGA, have three little dials here, but this one has two. This one's very obviously titled bright, and this one is contrast. But this is also the power button, and it's a push power button. So you pull it out and that turns it on, and I don't know, it's really cool. I don't know why, but it's just like on. You can really hear it. I don't know why I love that so much, more than I should probably, but that's really, a lot of them are just like, like buttons, or you turn it and it turns on, or I think the IBM monochrome monitor, you just plug it in. There's no power button at all on that monitor, I believe, but that's a cool little power button there. And this LED, if I remember correctly, it's actually not really bright, which is cool because, you're looking at the screen, you don't want this blazing bright green light here to distract you. It's kind of subdued a little bit, which is also nice. So I like this monitor. I don't have the IBM EGA monitor, so I can't really compare, but I wouldn't be surprised if I liked this this guy from Princeton here actually more than the IBM version. So this is the back of the monitor. We have Princeton Graphic Systems, an intelligent systems company. We have manufacture date of August 1986. That all seems about right. Not too much here on the back. We have two knobs for vertical and this one's horizontal hold. This one's vertical hold. Nice to have those. And then this is, let's see, vertical size, and can't read that one. B I don't know what that says, but I think my guess is you can pop these off, and maybe there's little pots that you can adjust, so that's nice. Standard 3-prong, and then the standard sort of 9-pin TTL video connector. And I do like that the cable isn't connected. I don't know if it's connected on the IBM monitor, but I know a lot of these old RGB monitors, it's a connected cable for the video. And I've mentioned that in the past with some monitors, and people don't really understand. I mean, I don't know. I had a comment like, well, if it breaks or something, you can just repair it and stuff. But like, it's just like, okay, if this was connected and something happened, like it got cut or it frayed or something, and then like you have to spend time, you have to like solder the wires back together and twist it back. Like, I can just pull off the broken cord, grab another one that I have in stock, or buy another one for $5 and stick it on. Fixed. So I like when the cables are not attached. It goes for the power cord too. So for me, it's a big plus that there's no like hardwired cables to this thing. So sometimes it makes transporting it easier as well, because they don't have to deal with like cables just hanging and dangling, and I have to wrap it. I can just pop them off and wind them up and put them in a bag or something. It is pretty heavy. This is a heavy monitor. Again, I do not have the IBM equivalent of this to compare it, but I can tell you that like this is fairly heavy. This is all plastic, so it's not like metal, but it's a heavy monitor. Now, you're not going to break your back or anything. It's not that heavy, but there's some weight to it. Alright, now that we have seen this machine pretty much bare bones, I have upgraded it. I've installed all the upgrades and expansion cards I believe I want to with this machine. So now let's take a look at it here. You might notice right away I did replace the floppy drive. The one in there was working, but it was a little wonky. So I replaced it. So that is now fully functioning. And yeah, I did confirm 1.44 megabytes and 1.2 megabyte drives. I just kind of assumed that's what they were, but it is a 286. They could very well have been like a 720K drive and a 360K drive, so shouldn't always just assume, but I did double check the drives, and they are the high density versions. Alright, so we're going to take a look at all of these cards I installed. But first, I do want to take, or show you guys, I did add a little adapter here, since if we wanted to use a serial mouse. Now, they did make serial mice that use this larger sort of serial connector. I don't know how many pins. I want to say like 25, but it could be less. But this is kind of like a large serial connector, and they did make mice with this connector, but they seem to be pretty rare. I thought I had one kicking around somewhere, but I couldn't find it. But the ones that use the smaller serial connectors are far more common. So I use this little adapter here. So these adapters are very easy to come by, and they're pretty cheap on eBay. Alright, so this is my machine as it stands now, and this is going to be my primary 286, kind of a stand-in for my IBM AT, which is currently out of action. But even once I restore the IBM, I'm probably going to keep this guy as my main one. It's a little bit faster. It's a little bit, just a little bit more versatile. Here's the cards. I'm going to go over them all probably pretty briefly. I think we've seen most of these cards before, or similar to them in other machines. I did put in an FPU. I forgot I had this guy kicking around, my little ITT FPU. Now this is rated for 20 megahertz. Of course, this machine isn't running at 20 megahertz. It's running at 12 at most. So that's good. That should still keep this guy nice and cool. And I believe the ITT version, the 2C87, I think this runs a little faster than like a standard Intel 287. I could be wrong on that, but I do think this chip is a little bit faster, even at like the same clock speed. I also think this one might be able to run at the same speed as the CPU, where I think the Intel version runs at the half of the speed. I'm not 100% sure, but that's a pretty nice FPU chip there. Not completely utilized in this system, but hey, whatever. And I did add a hard drive here. It is a Scuzzy drive, and what do we got here? It is a Seagate ST31230N. This is a 1 gigabyte Scuzzy drive, just because I had it. Compact flash is always an option, but I do like to use period hard drives when I can, when I feel it will be reliable enough. So we'll see. It should be a little bit zippier than IDE drives of the period. So let's go over these cards briefly. First up here we have our Scuzzy controller card. Nothing super fancy here, just an Adaptec, which is, they're kind of like the de facto Scuzzy controller cards. Very compatible. Drivers are fairly easy to find. They're fairly easy to set up. This is also working as my floppy controller. There's the one Scuzzy drive, 50 pin. Have a external connector here, the weird kind of larger ones. And yeah, that's about it. And in case you're wondering, well, it's an AHA 1540B/428, and then the sticker on the chip says it's an AHA 15428. It's either an 8 or a B, so I believe that is what this card is. If that's a B or an 8, can't really tell. Alright, and to you guys that have been watching my channel for a while, this card may look familiar. This is my Intel Above Board Plus 8. So this memory card was formerly in my 808 machine, or my Ultimate 808 machine. But its potential was really wasted there. When you're running something like an 8088, you don't really need more than the initial 640K, or even up to a megabyte. It's a little wasted. You usually aren't running things that use that kind of memory, or at least programs that run well on an 8088 machine. Aren't going to need that extra memory unless you're doing like spreadsheets or whatever. So I did remove it, and I put it in this 286 because I think it will get a lot more use, or it will be a lot more useful in a 286 that can take advantage of more games that may require extra memory. Now, I still only have the 2 megabytes installed, but I can install up to 8. So on this 286, there's 1 megabyte on board. So right now with this card, I have 3 megabytes of memory. It's a pretty good sweet spot for a 286, especially like a mid-range or slower 286, so that still should be more than enough. And if I ever feel like upgrading the memory, I always have the option to. And I really didn't have to do much other than reinstall the software and uninstall this there was a blank in there. So when you have this card installed in like an 8088 or I believe an 8086, you put the little blank in there, and I think I have it, yeah, right here, this guy. But when you're running this card in like a 286, you remove that, and it's been running just fine. So for a sound card, I decided to go with the Soundblaster Ct 1320C. There's a little confusion on if this is a Soundblaster 1.5 or a Soundblaster 2.0. This is a Soundblaster 1.5 as far as I can figure out. Mine has been upgraded with the CMS chip, so it will do a creative music system. I don't know how much use this will get. You don't necessarily need a sound card in a 286, depending, or maybe even an ad-lib or a clone would do well, but I like this. This is a good old kind of Sound Blaster. It will do CMS, it will do ad-lib, and it will do Sound Blaster sound. So I think this is a good match for this machine. I think this card came out in like 1990, so very early 90s. So yeah, this sound card should be a good match for this machine. And then finally, because I'll probably be playing some older Sierra point-and-click adventure games on this machine, I am adding a MIDI card. So this is an 8-bit MIDI card. This is the MQX16. I think it's Bequest is the company, and this should be fully compatible with intelligent modes. So I can hook up like an MT32 or something like that there to that port right there, and it should work in both dumb and intelligent mode. And I even have the dongle for it right here. There's the MIDI connectors, so I can hook this machine up to something like my MT32, and then I can get some good sound in something like, say, Hero's Quest or something like that. And always remember to set your jumpers on your video card, if you're running something like an EGA card, to the monitor you're using. So I have double checked, and I have changed the jumpers for an EGA monitor. So I have changed the jumpers for having an EGA monitor connected. So I put everything back together. I haven't screwed the case shut because we're just going to kind of do a test here. So I'm going to hook up the monitor, and then we'll do a test, and hopefully it boots up and works properly. Alright, so we're all hooked up. So we'll have our moment of truth in a moment. Now, of course, I've tested this machine. I know it works. I've also tested this monitor prior, so I know it works, but hopefully nothing has gone wrong with either of these things in between, you know, checking them out and whatnot. So I guess the only thing I can say, I mean, it looks okay. It's a little, I don't want to say comical, but it is a little bit like, I think this monitor would look a lot better on like an IBM AT that has kind of a wider or longer base. The monitor is almost as wide here as the PC itself, so it just kind of looks a little bit weird or a little comical. I think it would just look better if this case was like a little bit better, and then it was like centered and the monitor smaller. But I mean, it's still better because it's taking up less like desk space, but it just looks a little bit weird. But I still like it. Still like it. Alright, so I turned off the lights, so let's do our first go here. So pull that out for the power, and if you can hear that high-pitched frequency, I apologize. I can hear it myself. Okay, I'm gonna hit power on the computer. And there we go. Man, that looks nice. A little bit dim. I think I can brighten it there, but man, that looks sharp. I don't know if it comes across on the video camera, but this monitor looks sharp, man. This blows the Tandy CGA monitor, the CM5 out of the water. It just looks good. Alright, so I just hit enter and it did load up, although a couple interesting things. I don't know what that is. Maybe like an air reader. Maybe this has to do with the battery. I still need to remove the battery. I'm running MS-DOS 5.0 just because it's just to be a little bit older of an OS. It's a little bit more streamlined, doesn't have as much bloat as 6.22. So I think MS-DOS 5.0 works well with a 286, but feel free to disagree. Okay, we got the set blaster, and then weird thing with Cute Mouse, it sees the mouse, but you get this no VGA. Use an older CT mouse if you need EGA RIL support. I have no idea what that means, but I get that whenever I use the CT mouse drivers and an EGA card or a CGA card. I don't know. Maybe you're just supposed to use older mouse drivers if you're running an older video card. If any of you guys know why, I mean, I don't know why the mouse would relate to the video card you use, but if any of you guys know why, let me know. Maybe it has to do with like IRQs or something. Alright, so I guess simple stupid mistake. I think I was getting that weird error thing in the corner because I forgot to run the setup program. Because obviously that old battery that I really need to remove is dead. So I just, every time I start this machine up, I just need to remember I do need to reset all this stuff here, or at least most of it in the setup program. So it looks like it knows the base memory stuff, but I have to like specify the diskette drives, and I don't have to worry about the fixed disk type because it's Scuzzy, and the Scuzzy card takes care of that. Alright, I set the floppy drives, but I guess when I go to set video, it says VGA, EGA, MGA are auto set. Press any key to exit. So I guess it auto detects it as VGA. Now I know the ATI EGA Wonder 800 Plus was originally like a VGA card that was cut down to EGA, but I just thought the regular 800 was a pure EGA card. But I don't know, maybe there's something about it why it's being detected as VGA, but it seems to be working anyways, so let's exit and go back in. One thing to note about this computer is default it is 8 megahertz. You actually have to hit the turbo button to kick it into 12 megahertz mode. So with this off, just default, it does run at 8 megahertz. Alright, so here's the battery. I did finally remove it. It doesn't look like it's leaked or anything, but it was definitely dead. Might be bulging a little bit. And let's see if I can get back in there. Yeah, it looks okay. I guess I could clean that up a little bit, but it doesn't look like there was any like leakage, damage, or anything like that. Okay, so let's run MIPS here. And as you can see, so far it's pretty much spot on with a IBM AT, which makes sense. At least the later IBM ATs were running at 8 megahertz on the 286. So yeah, we have perfect parity there with a 8 megahertz IBM AT with a 286 in it. So yeah, this thing is spot on, at least according to MIPS, with an IBM AT at 8 megahertz. So let's hit the turbo button and let's run MIPS a second time. Alright, so with the turbo engaged, we're running at 12 megahertz, we were getting 1.51 the speed. So not half as twice as fast as an 8 megahertz IBM AT. So nice little bump there. Here's MIPS running with 0 wait states at 8 megahertz. So you see a little bump there. I did have to turn off the 0 wait states though, because it did lead to a little bit of instability. Alright, so let's take a look here at Duke Nukem. Let me just zoom in here on the screen, and I can tell you right away, man, it looks like super sharp. And here is Iron Man Super Off-Road Racer. Now this game has a variety of things we can select. We have Tandy 1000, that's 16 color, VGA, and then we have CGA, EGA 16 color normal, and EGA 64 color. Switchable 64 color monitors only. And that, I believe that's a special mode that wasn't used very much on with EGA cards. They can display 64 colors, I believe, at a lower resolution. So first of all, let's try CGA just so we can remember what 4-color CGA looks like, so we can compare it to EGA. Okay, so this is 4-color CGA, and I am using the ad-lib sound here. Speakers are off to the side. Let me turn that down a little bit. But yeah, here obviously we are using the 4-color CGA, which actually still looks really nice and sharp on this monitor, but yeah, it's only 4 colors. It's the cooler palette here. The magenta and the white and that light blue color, so it's generally pretty ugly. Now CGA could do different palettes, but still 4-color. Still not really the prettiest looking image here. Playable, I can look at it and see it, I can tell what things are, but it's still pretty damn hideous. So I'm gonna reset this game, and then we're gonna look at the EGA version. Here is the 16-color EGA version. You can tell right away it looks much better, much more colors. So we've got 16 colors on screen right here, and again, it looks really nice on this monitor. It's probably not translating all the way through to the camera, but man, it looks really nice. Whole different world compared to CGA. So let's take a look at the racetrack here. So yeah, definitely very big improvement here. It looks really really nice. So yeah, that's a quick comparison between CGA and the huge bump in like visuals and colors that you would get with EGA. Now I believe this is also pretty much what the Tandy 1000 color would look like, you know, on a CGA monitor, but still very nice. So let's try that special mode now, and let's try that 64 color EGA mode and see what kind of difference we get with that. Alright, and here's that 64 color mode. Right away, it does look a little different. I wouldn't say better. I know this blue is lighter. It was kind of a dark blue in EGA mode. It does look different. I just don't know if I would say it looks better. I don't know if I really see 64 colors there per se. But let's see when it goes into the track, the racetrack. So you may notice that doesn't quite look right. It's just these are really red there. That's a lot of red. It doesn't really look. It looks worse than 16 color EGA, at least in my opinion. The track does not look right. So doing a little research, I also found another YouTuber that was doing a video on EGA, and he used this exact same example, and he had this exact same result with the reds. Now, he felt at the time that maybe he had a bad card, or that it was possibly the monitor's fault. And again, I apologize if you can hear that high-pitched sound. I can actually hear it at the moment, so I can hear it too a little bit. Yeah, look, their skin tones are definitely off. They're kind of like, they look like grays. They're like little alien people, a little bit gray colored. But anyways, in his video, he thought that maybe some of these EGA monitors had a switch, that you had to switch from like CGA to EGA mode on the monitors. See this here, this looks pretty good. That might be right, but some of those colors are definitely off. But anyways, looking down in his comments, someone said that the 64 color mode for Iron Man Off-Road is bugged. So I'm just going to quit out of it here real quick. I don't know if that's true. But if it is, let us know in the comments. Maybe it's just the copy floating around on the internet. It has a bugged EGA 64 color mode. Or maybe the game just shipped with a bad 64 EGA color mode, but the track just does not look right, and I don't think it's my monitor or the card, because as I said, I found other people having the same problem. I've checked the switches on my EGA card. They are set correctly to be connected to an EGA monitor, so I'm pretty sure it's the game, it's the software, it is not my hardware. Alright, so here's something I want to show. Again, this is kind of one of the special modes of EGA. Now, this is SimCity version 1.02. And this is the SimCity install. So as you can see, there's different options up there. You got CGA at 640 by 200, and you get Hercules mode at 720 by 348. And you have Tandy color, which is 16 color at 320 by 200. But we're looking at the EGA modes, and we actually have 3 of them. And we have 640 by 350, 16 color mode. Now I think that is the special high resolution EGA mode. And then below that we have kind of like the regular EGA mode, the 320 by 200. And then we even have a 640 by 350 black and white mode. So that high resolution mode there, the 640 by 350, 16 color mode, that is not a mode you'd be able to display on a regular CGA monitor. It can do the CGA monitor will do the 16 color, but I believe it cannot do such a high resolution. It would be able to do the one under it, the 320 by 200 16 color mode, but I believe you're going to need an actual EGA monitor like we have here to do that high resolution mode. Now, nice thing about this game install too is it tells you the requirements. So minimum EGA RAM 256K, which I definitely believe this EGA card has. So if you have one of the kind of the entry-level EGA cards, you might not be able to do this mode. And minimum main RAM 640K, which yes, we do have. So I am going to attempt to install it with the high resolution EGA mode, and we'll see. Alright, so we're all installed onto the hard drive. So I'm going to try running it. And then we're going to see if anything even happened. Okay, and that's a bummer. It appears that it locked up the system. I wasn't expecting that. I'm in turbo mode, so I am running at 12 megahertz, and I've been sitting here for like 2 or 3 minutes. I thought maybe the high resolution mode maybe took an extra minute to load up, but I'm not getting anything. I don't even see any hard drive activity. So that's a bummer. It is completely locked up. Alright, I tried running it again and it keeps locking up. And I know this sort of works because I've run this game in the high resolution EGA mode on a different machine, actually on a 386, and it ran fine. So that's a little strange. I'm not sure why it's locking up here. Okay, so I don't think it's memory. I tried reinstalling SimCity again, and I installed the regular EGA mode, and it's doing the same thing. It just locks up when I try to run it off the hard drive. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. The disk in the game worked fine when I ran it on my 386. SimCity is not a game that requires a 386. I think this game even runs on a 8088. Unless version 1.02 has issues with anything lower than the 386, but I get the feeling it doesn't. So, okay, so I guess moving on. Okay, here another strike here. So there was another game I wanted to show you guys, and it's called Pawn, or The Pawn, and it should have been really cool because there are some games. It was another game that had a mode for that 64 color EGA mode, and I wanted to try it out, but unfortunately I get a input file absent corrupt, which I think my software is corrupt, and yeah, I mean that's just what happens when you're running with these old machines. You run into that a lot. You have your software, your disks are just corrupt, and then even if you go and download something from the internet, half the time they don't work right, or there's a crack to them that screws things up, or they're missing files, and so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to show you that, at least not in this video, because of time constraints and whatnot. But that's just one of the issues you have when you're working with this old software, especially. But that's a bummer though, because I've been watching some other YouTubers with EGA, and I don't think any of them have showed either the high resolution EGA mode running or the 64 color version EGA games running on an EGA monitor. I really wanted to show that to you guys. I really wanted to have that for you guys, but I do not. I can recommend to you guys though to check out a blog called Nerdly Pleasures, and I believe one of his pages talks about high resolution and 64 color EGA games. That's actually where I got the idea, or I found which games that I should try here. And he does have some screenshots. So that's unfortunate, but I do have other stuff I can show you guys. Alright, so I just installed Eye of the Beholder. Alright, there we go. There's our Soundblaster sound going on. Actually, this game, in my opinion, is actually kind of quite ugly in EGA. Of course, you can have your own opinion on that. I don't know. I think it's kind of ugly in EGA. But I don't know. That's just me. I suppose it's still better than CGA. But it's working. It's running from the hard drive. The sound's working. The game loaded. It's playing. Let me turn it down a little bit. So another game I really wanted to test on this machine is this guy here. This is the Colonel's Bequest, and I actually just acquired this game last month. So I believe this is the one of the last Sierra games that really was from the I guess the EGA era. They really focused on EGA, and supposedly it's just this game has some really beautiful EGA graphics in it. I think this is the original release from '89 that I have here. They did a re-release in I think '92 maybe, and it had a few updates to it. But I believe this is the original release. Now, so this is all floppy disks, and I haven't tested it, so I wouldn't be surprised if I get another fail on the install because of corrupt floppy disks. But I'm just going to try installing this game and see how it goes. Alright, so far so good. We're installing the kernel's Bequest, and I also, look over there, I've got an MT32 hooked up. Alright. Holy cannoli, I think it actually installed without errors, so it's telling me here I just have to hit enter. I put in the command, the CB, and that should start the kernel's Bequest. So let me turn off this light here. Turn off this, there we go, light, and now I'll hit enter, and then we shall actually see if it works. Okay, well, we did finally get an error. We got a disk error, not ready. Enter to retry. That's a weird one. I mean, ugh. So after some thinking with the kernel's Bequest, I remembered having similar issues when I tried to run MT32 sound on certain games. If it wasn't configured or set up correctly, it would freeze up. And I did check, and sure enough, kernel's Bequest does use intelligent mode with the MT32, which can cause lockups and issues if it's not set up correctly. Now, looking over all of my connections, I have done this many times before. It looks like everything's set up okay. I know the MIDI card I have in this machine is intelligent mode compatible, supposedly. So I'm not sure what's going on here. So at this point, I decided to test this theory by reconfiguring the game and setting the sound to Soundblaster, and sure enough, it did work. So definitely was a conflict with the MIDI card. And the sound, I set it up for MT32, but the sound works, and it's coming out of the Soundblaster, so I'm assuming it's... Let me turn it down. I'm assuming that it's now set up for Soundblaster, so I'm guessing the locking up then has to do with my MT32, so something's screwed up there. I'll have to work it out, but I am pretty positive that the card I have in there, the MIDI card, is definitely compatible with intelligent mode, so I don't know. I'll have to do some digging and figure it out. So in the meantime, I can play this game with sound just fine using Soundblaster mode. And again, I have to say, showing the game on the camera here just doesn't do this monitor justice. It's just a beautiful image, vibrant colors, really nice. And I also have to say, with the kernel's Bequest, this is actually my first time playing this game. I've only seen screenshots before, and I can see what people say. This is a... I've only played a little bit here, just looking at it, and it's just beautiful EGA graphics, setting this plantation atmosphere. I'm really kind of excited. Hopefully one day I'll actually find time to actually play this game. I heard it can be a little annoying with like timed events, but man, just as far as like EGA graphics go, the bit I played, it's just, in my opinion, it's just beautiful EGA graphics. So that's pretty cool. It just looks like I can't get over. I can't express enough how good it looks. And I mean, using my VGA monitor, it looks good too. But just, I don't know, running an EGA game on an EGA monitor through an EGA card, I don't know. It just something kind of cool about it. So there is a look at my DTK Tech 1230 286 machine. This is probably going to be my new mainstay, 286 setup. I love this monitor. But what are my plans for the future? Well, obviously there's a couple hiccups during this video. I thought I had this guy all ironed out, but it does seem there's some hiccups. So it seems like the issue with some of the games, like SimCity and The Pawn, was more like software related. I think it's just the copy I had. So I think the big issue I'm going to have to sort out with this machine is the MIDI card that's in there. So obviously I have an older Soundblaster that I cannot use. It is not compatible with MIDI devices. So that's why I have that MIDI card in there, which it should be intelligent mode compatible. So I'm not sure what's going on there. So in the future I am going to have to try to figure that out. It might be a jumper that's not set right on the card. Other than that, after all the fuss I made about using a real EGA card, and by the way, I've had no issues with the EGA card in here. It's worked fine with this monitor. But after thinking about it, I actually might switch back to that ATI VGA Wonder that is a EGA/VGA card, just to give me versatility. Because as long as I have just the EGA card in there, I'm kind of chained to this monitor. And although I love this monitor, there might be a situation where I don't want 15 monitors out at the same time, and maybe I want to use a VGA monitor. So that's why I might swap out that EGA card with the actual ATI VGA card. And that's a fine card. Like I said, I could actually still use this monitor with it because it does have the TTL connector on it for hooking up to CGA and EGA monitors, as well as one for like a standard VGA connector. So I still have the option of using this monitor, and I might take a small hit with compatibility, but I haven't really run into a game yet, an EGA game that doesn't run correctly on a VGA card. Of course, I've not played all games out there, but I don't think it will be a big problem with me. And as far as the issue of forcing VGA, if a game has EGA mode and VGA mode, I generally go for VGA mode anyways. So I don't really think that's going to be an issue for me. So yeah, I might switch back to just that VGA card. Not switch back. I might use that VGA card instead of the EGA card. But either way, it was fun to have a real EGA card in there and check out this setup. So I hope you guys like this video. Again, let me know what you think in the comments section, and I'll see you in the next video, and like and subscribe. Thank you. So just as an update to do some troubleshooting, I have taken out the EGA card and I put in the ATI Wonder, the 24X card, and just to show that card does work in TTL mode with this EGA monitor. See, there's the VGA connector, and then I have it hooked up there, and it is working. Interestingly enough, now it says primary display card EGA, whereas on the actual EGA card it said VGA, which makes me think that EGA Wonder 800 actually might have some kind of like a cut down VGA core. I thought it was only the 800 plus, but maybe it's the 800 as well. Something else interesting when using the ATI VGA Wonder is the text is a little bit smaller and more centered than when I was using the than when I was using this guy here. So that's a little interesting difference as well. And for instance, look here, when I go into edit, now this is using the ATI VGA card. Look how it's squished, and we got all this space here. It's like pushed over and squished. It's kind of weird. And yeah, you can see that with Eye of the Beholder I'm running now too with the ATI VGA card. It's squished in. I guess maybe that's something I can adjust on the monitor itself. I believe there's a horizontal and vertical hold on. Well, I think that's hold, not positioning. So I don't know. That's a weird sort of quirk. If anyone knows how to correct that, let me know. Else I'm gonna just go back to the EGA card, I think. So a little quick update here. I've been messing around with this machine to try to figure out the MIDI issue, and I think I figured it out. My guess is that the kernel's Bequest defaults to port 330 for MIDI. Some older games do that. They look for port 330 as the default for MIDI. Now, this card was set to 300. So I did set it for 330, but unfortunately after I did that, the machine started locking up because apparently there's a conflict with my Scuzzy card. And I looked, and apparently I was reading through the manual, and apparently the BIOS is set for address 330, so there's a conflict, and you can change the address, but you can't without disabling the BIOS on this card, and I don't know, it's confusing. I tried setting it for different addresses, and I was still getting the conflict, so it appears that this thing is conflicting with the MIDI card, which it's either replace this or just deal with it and only be able to play, you know, MT32 or games that use MIDI with if you're unable to select port 300. Apparently if the game defaults to 330, I'm not going to be able to play it because the conflicting with this Scuzzy card. I guess I could replace this with something else. I think I have like IDE controllers. I might do that in the future. For right now, I'm probably just going to leave it alone, but I wanted to make the update for the video. I think that is the issue with this machine and MIDI, at least with the kernel's Bequest. So whether I swap this guy out for a different controller card that's not going to conflict with my MIDI card, probably, but not at the moment. So I just wanted to do an update, pulled it all-nighter on this project, and if you can hear in the background, that is the MT32, and we got it running here. And yeah, so how did I get around the issue? I just wanted to do this quick update before the video ends. Is I just couldn't get it to work with this Scuzzy controller, as I said earlier. So I did have a EIDE card, and so I installed that and I reinstalled everything. Actually, the drive here, it's a newer drive. It's twice as big, so we're getting 2 gigabytes instead of 1, and it is a little bit quieter than the Scuzzy drive, so I pretty much just have to clean all this up, and we should be good. So yeah, kind of a weird issue. I don't know why this was conflicting so strongly with the MIDI card, but I really needed that ability to play MT32 on this machine. So let me turn it down. The only downside is, well, I'll show you. Alright, and I've also switched over to my VGA monitor just to test the VGA portion of the card, since we know it's working on the EGA monitor. So let me hit reset. So this is what it does now. So loads up like normal, and then it gets to this point and it stops, and it asks me to hit F1 to enter setup or press any key to continue, and then I just hit like enter or any key, and then it loads up as normal. I mean, it didn't do that before with the Scuzzy card. It just booted right into DOS. For some reason with the EIDE card it stops at that point, but I'm fine with it. It's just a press of a button. I'll trade that for the ability to hear my MT32 sounds now in game. So glad I figured that out. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.